Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 1912 Exiles podcast, the original, the biggest and the best Newport County podcast made by the fans. Say it with me, for the fans. We're brought to you by the Terrace Cymru Podcast Network and in association with our friends at the Riverside Sports Bar, the best burgers in Newport, if I do say so myself. Now, it's time to introduce myself. I am Jack. I am your occasional host, not here very often, but I'm here for the special stuff. And I'm joined today with the man on the Northern Beat, Mr. Ian Street. Hello.
Hi, Jack. How we doing?
Very well, very well.
Good to be back.
And on this special episode, it may give away the tone. And for those of you watching on YouTube, it might give you away from the title of the episode. We are joined by a man who can speak all about it, the one and only Chris Shingler, club historian. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Now, usually at the start of the pod, we advise YouTube viewers that they're an afterthought and the video version is just a rough and ready and edited version. But today, we're going to put you to the test. Get yourself to the YouTube channel and watch this. This is our visual guide to Somerton Park. And this is the feeling of myself. This is why I'm hosting it, is that I'm 35. I'm too young to know Somerton Park. And we want to bring forward the memories of Somerton Park with Ian and Chris and evoke those memories in you, the listener. So we're going to do our best to sort of carry on the good work that we've seen with the Newport County AFC Nostalgia Group, of which I know Chris is a very big part. So let's start. The first picture that you see here on our intro slide shows Newport County versus Oxford United in Guest the Year. Ian, Guest the Year, potentially? Would you know?
Oh, God. I'm going to go 84?
Oh, nearly 81. Really close. For those Wikipedia lovers out there, you'll know this is probably the easiest photo to find. It was straight on the Wikipedia page for Somerton Park. But just as a bit of a spoiler for the rest of the pod, you will see some stuff you've never seen before. That's right. Okay, let's do a bit of housekeeping before we get into the meat and bones of it. By way of context, we are recording this at the end. We are recording this at the end of June. Although when the episode does eventually go out, it will be anyone's guess, as our release schedule might get overtaken by certain events. And I know, if we're thinking recently, Mr. Fuchs has left, and that's quite a large topic. Anyway. Next slide for those watching, and if you're listening, get on the YouTube. Pause Pocket Casts, get back on YouTube and watch this. Right, where was the ground? For context, this is the Google Maps of the area now. You can see that the Househead estate is built on this site, and it is called Somerton Park, yes. And there is indeed a tiny park at the end of one of the closes, although it's hard to imagine anyone in 35 years' time will have much emotional attachment to it. What you can see from the map is that the ground was bounded to the north by the railway line, to the east by Somerton Road, and to the south by Cromwell Road, and to the west by Fairfax Road. Next slide. Next slide. This shows Cromwell Road. Does this evoke now a few memories, Ian, of the walk up? This is taken from the junction with Somerton Road, and you can see the floodlights from floodlight watchers of old of the ground there. What are your memories of the area around the ground, Ian? Did you have particular haunts before match day when Somerton Park was a thing, and did you or others have any interesting match day routines in the local area?
I think that it's interesting if you go back to that first picture. So I used to. So there was the one where the map is, because I'm going to sort there the map, yeah. Because there was only a few ways into the ground really, depending on how you approached it. I think there was a slightly different atmosphere where you came from. So I always came down Somerton Road across the railway line. So when I was younger, before I could make my own sort of way, my dad had no interest in football. He would drop me basically on the edge of Chepstow Road, which is just a bit further on the map, and then you'd walk down past the Cross Hands pub, and then you'd walk down Somerton Road. And as you went off more and more often, you used to be able to guess the crowd by the sort of squidge going over the railway bridge that you can see on the picture there. So it was always a question of when the sort of crowds weren't great, everyone was sort of single file on the pavement over the railway bridge. But when we were going well and the crowds were big, you'd be properly squeezed over that bridge, and you'd think, oh, it was a big crowd today. So that was always my approach. As I got older, I used to catch the bus in from sort of the Killeen angle, and used to like get off at the top of St Julian's and then walk down sort of by the side of Beechwood Park and then down to Chepstow Road and over. Or I would go into town and either walk or come up Chepstow Road. I wasn't one of the ones who came up the Cromwell. I was a bit dicey for me, the Cromwell Road, where it used to get a little bit hairy at times. Although having said that, it's not there now. So if you go back to the Cromwell Road photo, so go forward one. So where that's taken from, just to the left here, there was another pub called the Black Bull, I think.
Black Horse. It's got to be the Black Horse, isn't it?
Was it Black Horse? Was it Black Bull? Black something. So occasionally,
Black Horse.
Occasionally you used to go in there when I got older. And they used to have the doors shut, I seem to remember. So you couldn't get in unless you were sort of known. And Mark Vickery, who people will know, who big county fan. I went to school with Mark. His family used to sort of often sit in. You could see out the windows. You could give them a nod, and they give the doorman a nod and let me in. I could have a pint in there. So if I had a pint near the ground, it would be in the Black Horse. Otherwise, I would have a pint. Bizarrely, sometimes in the Murringer, still as we do now.
Yes,
and then come out down the Chepstow Road. So the Murringer still played a part for me. Even though this ground was nowhere near the town centre. So that was my approach though, and it was that railway bridge was key for me. Going over that railway bridge and the crowd, and then looking down and seeing the floodlights and seeing the crowd. That was my approach. But I wonder how Chris got to the ground. What was yours, Chris?
Yeah, I walked up Somerton Road in the opposite direction from Ian, because I lived in Liswerry. So I'd walk past the Vic, the King, and the Black Horse. While I was younger, I quite often popped in one or two of them when I was a bit older on the way to the ground. But my main memories of that area really would be like Ian mentioned. You could always tell, even as far back as down on Nash Road, whether it was going to be a good crowd or not, just purely by the number of people walking up the road, towards the ground. And obviously, as you got closer to the ground, you'd see more and more people. And my other major memory of that area really is when you crossed over the road and went to go down Somerton Lane to get to the turnstiles. There would always be a program seller situated on the bottom of the bridge selling programs. And you knew sometimes if he wasn't there and all the programs had been sold, you knew there was a good crowd ahead of you, But that's my main memories of that area. Really, is that is the walk up to the ground and, like I say, the pubs on the way up to the ground. Really, when I was a bit older.
On program sellers, this is probably an adjacent point. Might get into trouble going against the slides. I know Ian would love this because there was I've got a faint recollection that we had quite a strong fanzine culture. Chris, was that part of the bones of the experience when it came to a day at Somerton Park was fanzines and obviously you get the program sellers, but was Never Say Die a thing? I recall finding that in an old box when I moved and absolutely loving the cover art.
Yeah. It was not with the original Newport County. It was just purely programs. The fanzine started in the first season of Newport AFC. That would have been 1989-90 season. That's when Never Say Die started, and that early sort of times, before the internet and social media. They were a good sort of. I suppose it's on lines of what your podcast is today, really. They could be quite funny, they could be quite hard hitting, they were always a good read. But going back to Somerton Park days, it was there would have been fanzines around when Newport AFC played there, but not when the original Newport County played.
I suppose you probably get more comment and feature in the local Argus at that time. You're probably more heavily, covered by the local rag, so to speak.
Argus was massive, wasn't it? I mean, we were sponsored by them for quite a long time. South Wales Argus used to be on the front of the old Patrick kit, and we always used to have as well that I never knew how they did them. You had like the green uns, the pink uns used to be out when you come out of the ground. You could pick up a little sheet which had the results in. Now we all check our phones, don't we? But then you could get that outside the ground. On the way back to get your bus, which was always quite a big part of, that obviously that's dead now. But I used to really like that, getting the sort of that sort of cheap, like 2 pieces of paper, coloured with the results on the table. Often half of them were wrong and stuff like that. But that was great.
So that was almost like a in-print video printer then back in the day. It was like. Really? So they'd be that quick with the score? I imagine someone would ring that into a person and write it out or print it out? How would they get that to the ground so effectively?
I don't know. They were printed and they would be like one or literally like a double-sided, A4 almost. And that would have like the day's results and sometimes the league tables. But obviously they had to print them, presumably. Bearing in mind, we often kicked off a bit later than everybody else because we often kicked off at 3:15 rather than 3 o'clock. So you get outside the ground afterwards, but if there'd been, like late goals had gone in, sometimes they wouldn't be there. So you got the results, but they weren't always right. But it was a great bit. I used to love that, picking that up.
Was there any quirk as to why we kicked off frequently at 3:15?
I'm hoping Chris can tell me this because I never knew. I always heard it was something to do with the steelwork and shifts and all that sort of stuff, but. There's a lot of other places that have steelworks that didn't kick off at 3:15. So I don't really understand why we did. I don't know if Chris knows that.
That was the reason. It was because the shift workers at Lamworn, I believe, to give people more time coming off the 6 till 2 shift to get to the ground. And that's why we all also used to kick off at 7:15 in the evening games, because it meant the guys who were going in on nights, it gave them an extra sort of 15 minutes because games didn't kick off 8 o'clock and 7:45 back in them days. They were either 7:30 or 3 o'clock, But we always give them that extra 15 minutes. But yeah, you're right. It's originally because of the steelworks. Yeah.
As a ex-Lamworn man, my heart is singing with that news. I wish that was still a thing when I was coming off shifts in the morning and, I had to go in all night and can we just delay the kickoff until later? And that would have been great. For all you Hot Coal Finish listeners, there's probably one or two of you. Much love to you and I hope you're doing well. It's a difficult time in the steel industry. Right. Before I get into more trouble with the Slide Master, let's go back up and let's continue on. Let's have a look at the ground from above. There it is. Right, so there's a couple of aerial shots of the ground. The one at the top is taken earlier than the one below. You'll see in the bottom one, which is about the early 90s, that a lot of the structures along the one side, the social club side, have been demolished by then, including the social club itself and the stand. Looking back, with the benefit of hindsight, it feels like a higgledy-piggledy mess of lots of different disparate structures. A big L-shaped stand behind one long end and a bit of a side, and then lots of open terrace around it. Plus the segregation of a track, of course, between the pitch and the spectators. Did that make for an odd viewing experience, Ian? And when you went elsewhere in the country to watch the county, what did other fans say about our ground and how did it compare to other grounds? I know from personal experience, one of the first things people say when they reminisce about the ground itself was, it had a racetrack around it, and I saw some great people. I worked in Lamworth with a man called Erskine, and his father was big into the speedway and would have ridden around there quite a lot and done quite well. What did the away fans think of it, and what was the actual lived experience of looking over it and just generally when you were stood on the ground? I suppose, where were you studying?
I mean, for me, I mean, it was a proper higgledy-piggledy mishmash, isn't it? I mean, you described that brilliantly. I mean, but when you first start going, that's the only ground you know, isn't it? Like for every home fan, whatever club you support, your home ground, that's all you know. So you sort of grow to love its idiosyncrasies, its quirks, its weirdness. And Somerton Park was a weird ground, you know. But one of the things I loved about it, so if you look at the main stands, so you've got to the right of the main stand, you've got the sort of open popular bank, and then to the left of it, you've got a covered terrace, right? But you could walk behind the main stand. So what a lot of people did is you'd work out which way you were kicking. So I would always stand on the popular bank unless it was raining. And then you decide which way you were kicking. And if you were kicking towards the railway end, then everyone would walk round, not everyone, but a lot of people would walk round behind the main stand, and then they'd fill that covered terrace, you know, on the left-hand side. If you were kicking towards a Cromwell, you'd stay on the popular bank or go in a Cromwell if you wanted to. And that was a bit of a quirk. You know, you couldn't do that at most of the grounds in that way. You know, when I started going away, obviously you penned in somewhere, but I thought that was a quirk. The only bit I never ever went in, I stood in every bit of it apart from the social club side. So I never went in the social club side. Stood in the Cromwell away end, because for a while the away end was turned into the home end because they put the away fans down in the railway end. I stood in the railway end where I went for my first ever match. I've been in the main stand, but it was the terraces that I went on the popular bank or in the bit next to the main stand, the covered terrace. I don't know what that was called, just the covered terrace. Chris might help us out. Where did you go, Chris? What was your bit?
Well, first of all, the bottom picture, the social club stand actually burnt down in the early 90s. So yeah, it was demolished, but it was only demolished because of the fact that it was burnt down. I think it was during the last season when AFC played there before we were booted out of Gloucester. I echo everything you say, really. I used to stand. Well, when I was a young child, my grandfather, my poppy, worked on the gate of the bottom of the stand. It was always known as the enclosure. In later years, they called it the lower stand, but everybody referred to it as the enclosure. And he used to work on the gate because they used to charge an extra, sixpence or whatever to get in to sit down after you paid your main entrance fee. So he would just open the gate for me and my mate, and we would slip in between the speedway boards and the actual sort of concrete wall, breeze block wall. So there was a nice little gap. I mean, I don't think I could probably get my foot in there if it was still there today. But back in them days, it was rather slimmer, and we could just shot straight down there, and the people at the back could only see the top of our head. So it was, it was happy days. But when I got a bit older, I started to stand just at the corner, near the corner flag, where the covered terracing is, and that was my main. But we did used to, like Ian said, we used to swap ends now and again, and go and stand on the open bank at the down the Cromwell, towards the Cromwell end. I've never watched a game from the social club, but I've been in there many times. But funny enough, towards the end of the Somerton Park days, when AFC were playing there in the Bees Midland division, one of the group of lads I used to go with suddenly said, "Oh, why don't we go and stand over there?" Because I don't think any of us had ever been over that side of the ground, and so we actually went over there, and blow me, it was quite a good view. It really was a good view from over there, and we were thinking, like, why haven't we come over here before? But as for the social club, Paddy's Bar, I mean, in many ways, it was ahead of its time, really. Because it was all glass fronted. It was a big bar behind, but it could have been easily turned into executive boxes that we see today. I mean, nobody would even give that a thought back in the 60s and 70s or even the 80s. But you know, I mean, it really was ahead of its time, really. You know, the sort of facilities it offered. So yeah, you know, you see it there now. You know, it was yeah, you had the pillars, you know, but I mean, every part of the ground, there's Somerton Park, you had the pillars, you know, obstructing your view, a little bit like Rodney Parade, really, on the, you know, on the Hazel side. But yeah, and it was wooden sort of terracing underneath, and underneath the stand there was like a big sort of alleyway, which was the way to get in and out of the actual terrace part of it. But like I said before, there was a separate entrance to actually go up the stairs and into the social club itself. I mean, of course, in them days, you know, it wasn't an issue. You could, you know, people would be up there drinking, because you can't sort of drink these days, can you, in view of the pitch? But in them days, it wasn't an issue at all, you know. But yeah, we often used to go into the social club on a Saturday night if we'd been away games, especially if they were long trips, you know, up north. And by the time you got back home, you know, you were a bit tired and you didn't really want to sort of go into town. You know, it was a bit late then to go into town, and you probably didn't have the right clothes on anyway, you know, to be going up nightclubs. So yeah, we just used to have a few drinks in Paddy's Bar before we went out.
How much was a pint? I'm probably going to scare the modern listeners now. How much was a pint, and what was the best pint in there? Or was it just a bit, you know, was it just middle?
I honestly can't remember. I can't remember what beer they sold in there, but well, when I started drinking in the late 70s, it was about 24 pence a pint. I can remember. I was only 15, mind, but yeah, I can remember there being a massive row on the one budget when the pint of beer went up to 26p. You know, it was like thought it was going to bring the government down. You know, but yeah, it was about 24 pence a pint when I first started drinking in the late, you know. And obviously in the social clubs, it was always a little bit cheaper as well, you know.
Jack, for me, I think in mine was about 75p. So I'm a bit younger than Chris, so about 75p. I remember it. I remember the big Chris talked about the price increase then. I remember it going up to £1 a pint.
Yeah,
and that was madness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so about 75p when I started.
Right then, in the background, Ed is spiritually mucking around with the slides, and I know that I'm going off format, and he's probably struggling to keep up with us. And I'm also conscious of the fact it's about 20 slides, so I'm going to try and get it back into some sort of rhythm, and we'll go back to main entrance and turnstiles. Let's keep the stars turning. So we're going to do a lap around the ground now. We're going to start by going through the terraces and then working our way down one side by the main stand, past the Cromwell, up the social side, and then along the railway end, even though we've already sort of talked about all of that altogether. We'll give it a go.
Yeah.
The turnstiles are located to the side of the main road, backing onto Somerton Road, and with a railway line off to the right, I'm pretty sure. Was it just the one set of turnstiles for the whole ground, or was there another entrance somewhere else? Just these?
No, there was different entrances. So these were the ones. So you say you were coming the way I was approaching. So you've crossed the railway bridge, then there'd be stairs down like the embankment, and then into these. Yeah. Or as Chris was saying, if you come up from Liswerry, you had an option. You could walk up Somerton Lane to these, or you could go into the turnstiles behind the Cromwell. So Cromwell had both home turnstiles and away turnstiles when they were putting the away fans in there. So there's turnstiles there. And I believe, as Chris was saying, there was turnstiles over on the social club side, but I never went over there, so I don't know about them. But so yeah, most came in either here or the Cromwell.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as Ian said, yeah, spot on. Like I said, there was also a set of steps then, which would take you up to the social club. But yeah, as you went through the main gates here, there was a sort of a courtyard area. Straight in front of you would have been the Amber Bar. Next to that was a little program shop. That's that kind of building there. You can see under where it says "Welcome to Somerton Park." You can't see her in that shop, but to the right of the stand there was a set of offices and a gym as well. which was obviously used by the players, and it was used for supporters would go as well to keep fit classes. And also, of course, you can't see on that picture, but just off that picture to your left-hand side was the house where David Pearce lived, the championship boxer, the British heavyweight champion boxer from Newport, and he used to train at the ground and train in the gym as well. And yeah, to the left of that photo, then you'd be behind the back of the main grandstand. You would always, I don't know if you can remember, you can always smell the liniment of the players, because sometimes the dressing room windows would be open. You could that smell of the liniment they used to put on their legs. That was as soon as you walk through the turnstiles, you could smell that. And then obviously the back of the stand, then there was the supporters club and their little office as well, which you could buy pin badges and things like that from in there. And like I say, there was a main sort of catering area then where you could get your hot dogs and burgers and pies and pasties, a little sweet shop. And then, of course, there was the police cell. Although I think in latter years, I don't think it was used, to be honest with you. But and then, of course, you had the famous Somerton Park toilets then, which were sort of located just behind the corner of the open bank. And I'm sure I see Ian nodding his head. I'm sure he knows the smell I'm talking about straight away.
Paint us a picture of the toilets, Ian. Why were they so famous?
Well, I guess, I mean, you haven't really ever experienced anything like that as a young lad. But they were basically, it was just a big rectangle with no roof, right? So it was basically, a big piss wall in a rectangle with made of brick, and you could just get in. I think you could get in at both ends possibly, or get in at one end and have to go out the other end.
Yeah, you could.
Two little entrances into it, and then basically everyone effectively back to back, with a bit of a gap in the middle to get out. And it was, to be honest with you, I'm quite glad there wasn't a roof on it, because it would have been, it hummed a bit as it was, but, it was a bit hilarious when you think about, right, I need the loo. And it's a cold, winter's day in January, and it's, sleeting it down or whatever. You just got to stand in the open air. That was it. That was the facilities. Wild.
For the Footy Scran Twitter account, was what was the food like? Was it really basic, or am I to be surprised here?
It was basic from my perspective. I mean, I'd often pick up, actually, because there used to be at the bottom of the embankment, on the steps down, there was often like a burger place there, just like you don't see them as much anymore. Just with the hot plate frying outside and the smell, which I always found really evocative. Like even now, that smell of like an evening game and the burger and the onions. So if I was buying, I'd pick something up there often before you go in. And the other thing, just to mention about those turnstiles there, and I think this happened around the country a bit, but if you waited till half time, you could come in for nothing. They'd just let you in. So you'd always get a few people where those gates are there. You'd always get a few people hanging around, wait for half time, and then they'd open the gates. You could come in, which was bizarre, but you could.
Yeah.
Clicking now. Right. Okay. Well, shame that's not a sort of halftime deal anymore. I wouldn't have minded that, especially when we're playing pants. Anyway, programs. Right. So this is this might be new for everyone. You might not have seen this before. This is exclusive. This was sent in to us by Sarah Bolton, the Greenham, of herself, age 6 in 1989, selling programs to home fans. She said, "The bloke taking the photo as I turned to smile, and he said, 'No, carry on what you're doing.' It appeared in the Argus days later." She said that over the years, she helped with all sorts of things at the ground, weeding the terracing and being covered in amber paint, helping David Hando seal letters in the boardroom or putting stamps on envelopes. So a great late thank you, Sarah Bolton, for your service to the club. I know we've had a little chat about programs already. Yeah, we had to show you that one. Right, so let's jump to the next one. Looking down on the Somerton Road sign, look at that. Right. From here, you can see the entrance between the covered terrace and the main stand, and this looks down towards Cromwell End. Who stood in this part of the ground? What sort of characters stood at this part of the ground? And how about the main stand? Was it, when we think about, I think back to Spitty days. Those are my days, and I can't wait to go back to the pre-season, which is very, very soon, to stand where I stood, because of mainly my memories that evoke the colourful characters that I made friends with, or maybe kept a safe distance from. What can you speak to on the on the Somerton Road side, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, this was the covered terrace. So this is, if you think about it, I've just come through the turnstiles. If it was raining, I would go straight in here. So as you can see here, most people are shoveled towards the back, aren't they? So no idea if it's raining there or not, but you shuffle in, get under the thing, and it would create good atmosphere in there when that happened. But if it wasn't raining, I'd go the other side of the stand onto the bank, and then see which way we were kicking. And then I'd bob round. So whichever way I was kicking, I wanted to be either in here or the other side. I used to really like it when we were kicking towards this end, because I used to think the atmosphere in here was good, and it was always a really good mix of, wags, effectively, not the wives of the players, but the old wags who was, because everyone's, you could smoke in those days, so there would be the cigarette smoke. You'd have people who'd been going for years, who would be with the Serbic comments were coming out, but you'd also have younger fans like myself probably mixing in with all of that as well. So it had a really good sociable mix in there, I thought, and I really liked this bit. And Chris was saying this was more his spot than mine. He stayed there more than I did, but I liked the covered terrace. I thought it was a great little bit of the ground for me, but a good mix, I thought. Chris, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you would get some harsh comments from one or two from this area of the terracing, if certain players wasn't pulling their weight. There's no doubt about that. But like you say, yeah, it was a good mix. It generally wasn't too much sort of bother, at that, on this side. That sort of occurred in other parts of the ground. But yeah, I agree with what you say about sometimes some of the best atmospheres at Somerton Park were when it was raining, because as you say, everybody would be under that cover, and if the team were playing well, I mean, it would be quite loud, for such an open ground with a speedway track and everything. Like you say, if the Cromwell end was full as well, and this cover, and even the people in the stand would have a little, shake their jewelry sometimes. But yeah, it was a good mix, and yeah, happy memory. I mean, that photo there, I mean, it could have literally been taken. I mean, if I'd had a mobile phone in them days, I'd have probably took that picture pretty much every match. That was pretty much the from the spot I actually stood on. So yeah.
A note from the nostalgia group on Facebook. So this you might be able to spot him, Dan Leahy. He tells us that that's him in the light brown coat with his dad, Don Leahy, in about 1983, as I would have been about 12. We'd get to the ground early to sell lottery tickets, just the other side of the turnstiles. Sometimes we would move to the other side of the ground, depending on which way, as Ian said, thematic of very much of what Ian is talking about, depending on which way County were kicking in the first half. On the same group as well, Brian Collins recalled that the club lottery was called for a time at least. Ian, what was it called?
Oh, God.
Chris will know, because Chris is the club historian.
I can't remember. Chris is going to have to help me out here.
Yeah, it was called the County Bounty.
There we go.
There you go.
Bounty. Yeah.
Bring back the County Bounty.
We didn't have too much commercial activities going on until the mid-70s, really. And the County Bounty was it was a sort of a ticket where it had like a perforated edge. So you would rip the perforated edge off and open it up, and there would be about 3 or 4 different games in there. Like you know, there would be a sort of like a sort of a jackpot thing, you know, where you had to have 3 cherries or something, you know, to win 20p or something like that, you know. And there was a couple of like little bingo things or something, or you know, there was a couple of different. There was about 4 different chances of winning, you know. But rumor has it that you know, the old secretary Keith Saunders and the commercial manager Mike Lewis somehow knew where the winners. They must have had a sort of a dot or something, and apparently they used to go through and take all the winners out, so the county
classic
money. I will add the word allegedly there, obviously. Although I think Paul Keith's no longer with us, but Mike might still be, but it's only what he's told us before. But yeah, but that was the forerunner really of the sort of you know, and then they come out with sort of lottery cards, which were actually proper scratch cards, which are very similar to the ones you see today. You know, the National Lottery ones, quite sort of similar. And then of course the Lifeline started up, and you know, things progressed from there really. But
the Bent County Bounty, I love it. Right, okay, let's roll on to the view from the main stand. So this is taken from the main stand towards the Cromwell end there. The Cromwell was divided into a home section on the left as we look at it, and you can see the gap in the middle between the home fans and the away fans. We'll talk about that a bit more when we see a shot of the Cromwell end, hopefully. Chris, what are your memories on the main stand? Was it all seated? Was it a bit, for lack of a better term, was it a bit posho?
Yeah, I mean, I only ever went to up in the main stand for reserve team games, if I'm being honest, because obviously it was free to go up there, and you know, you like to have a look around because you know, you wouldn't normally get in that area of the ground. There would be sort of, sometimes you'd see some first team players up there, you know, players who weren't playing the first team and maybe hadn't gone away with the first team because they're injured. So they'd be there watching. Sometimes you see the odd sort of, you know, face from somewhere, some other club, you know, some manager watching a player or something, you know. So it was quite interesting to have a look around to see who was up there, really. But yeah, it was all seated. Another little story was, I can just about remember it, because the seats originally were just sort of like basically wooden benches. They would sell, or you could hire a cushion on the turnstile and actually sit on the cushion, you know, for an extra, you know, couple of pence or whatever it was. The only problem with that was if a referee had a particularly bad game, he would quite often get showered with cushions raining down from the stand. And I'm not joking. I know we've gone into trouble at Rodney Bray for the kids behind the goal dug out throwing sweets, but these were fully, you know, full on cushions coming down at the referee, which was always amusing. But when they put the plastic seats in at some point in the I want to say 70s, you know, later on in the 70s, obviously the cushions become a thing of the past. But yeah, I mean, it offered probably the best view in the ground because you were a little bit higher, especially in, you know, the upper grandstand. You were up. That was like the highest sort of viewing point. Well, coupled up with the social club. Obviously, as you can see from the photo, you had the stanchions in the way, so you know, you maybe had to pick your seat a little bit carefully so one wasn't blocking the goal. But yeah, we're used to that now. We're at Rodney Parade now, we're on the Hazel side. But yeah, I mean, in the front of it, you can't see it from that picture. There would be the director's box, where obviously the directors would sit and the officials and, you know, visiting directors. Just below that, then there was a long strip where it was a press box, basically, a little bit similar to the one now at Rodney Parade, you know, at the back of the Hazel stand, but it was more boxed in rather than it sort of being open. And then just to the left of that again, if you're looking onto the pitch, would have been the place where the match announcer would sit and you know, play the tunes of the day and announce the team changes and what have you. And obviously, that's where Tim Thraves, who, you know, we all know as the voice of Newport County now. That's where he would have started doing his thing.
And then for reference, if you could just see on the photo, if you are on YouTube, again, another reminder, get on YouTube and watch this. That is St. Patrick's Church in the background. It's still there. So if you wanted the point of reference where Somerton Park was, you can kind of have a mosey and figure it out for yourself. Okay, next. I think this is where I would live on a Saturday afternoon. It's the open terrace in Cromwell End. I know I've seen all the famous artworks of like people gathering on this open terrace end. That's if I could find it, I'd hang it up in my house. Is all that they say about the Cromwell End true? Was it the most boisterous end at Somerton Park? Was it the loudest? Was this where the hardcore lived, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, going back to the day when I first started to go there, yeah, you're talking, full on skinheads, big Dr. Martin boots, lots of denim going on, braces. Yeah,
Sounds like Ian.
Full sort of, yeah, the full sort of skinhead mode. I mean, you can't sort of airbrush it into history. That's the way it was back then. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you get some away fans would get into the ground early, and they would try and sort of stand at that end, and of course, by sort of 10, 15 minutes before kickoff, when the vast majority of the county fans would start getting there, obviously. Yeah. Well, let's just put it this way: there was a couple of interesting scuffles, should we say, which generally led to the away fans sort of beating a bit of a retreat. But yeah, that was our end. I mean, I know it looks not great, but to the lads who stood on there, that was their cop, that was their Stretford end. I mean, it's as simple as that. And
how did the match day security deal with that sort of element back in the day? And did it stop games? How was it a bit more of a heavier police presence, or what was the temperature like?
There wasn't so many stewards. I mean, these days it's mostly stewards, but back in them days it was just all police. You did get a few stewards, but not as many as you do today. Yeah, it was very heavily. Certain games obviously were very heavily policed, and yeah, I mean, you did see some full scale fights at that end. Sometimes it would spill over onto the speedway track once now and again, but by and large, it was sort of it was sort of contained. We obviously, the best part for any county fan, especially standing on the open bank, would be if a couple of away fans got arrested, and of course they'd have to march. The police would march them around the speedway track then, by the scruff of their necks. And of course, you can imagine what the comments and the singing would be towards them. That was probably quite a funny thing. Yeah.
Ian, did you ever roll in the mud with the opposition?
I did sometimes go into Cromwell, did some nice standing there. And as Chris was saying, if it was raining, everyone on this popular bank would either go to the other terrace we've just shown you, or everyone would flood into the Cromwell. So they were great days when it was like that. And then the away fans were the other side of the Cromwell, so the noise in there was absolutely tremendous. Then you used to get great atmosphere. And just thinking back, what's probably hard to think about when you look at this dilapidated old ground is how many people we could wedge in there at times. The Carl Zeiss game, 18,000 in there. You can't imagine that, can you? Looking at some of these pictures, and we were just saying before we came on air. I remember the big game, Cardiff City, 11 o'clock kickoff. There was 16,000 in the ground. 11 o'clock kickoff against Cardiff down here. I mean, you can't really get your head around that sort of support, and it's amazing, really. When you look at this ground and think, how on earth did we did you wedge at 16, 17, 18,000 in here? But we did. And we were there.
Was there ever an official capacity announced and attached to Somerton Park, or was it just that the Jaina game, we sold it to the Gunnels and we just presumed that to be 18,000, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think, back in 1981 there would have been any sort of safety certificates at sports grounds, to be honest with you. I could be wrong, but I mean, nobody ever really mentioned about the capacity of Somerton Park. I think it was just the fact that, we sold 18,000 tickets and that was it, Like we said off air before, the actual record crowd was 24,000, but that was way back I think it was the 1920s, I think, against Cardiff City. And as I was saying to Ed, there was a photograph of spectators up on the grandstand roof watching the match. But yeah, I think it was just a matter of, I can remember the Carlisle game. I mean, it took me about 20 minutes just to walk from the turnstiles to get to my normal spot. I'm not joking. It was, you just had to really just push past people. I mean, it would never ever in a million years, it wouldn't be allowed today. Certainly not. I mean, probably. I think after sort of the Heysel disaster and the Bradford fire, things did start to tighten up a bit, and there were safety certificates then, certainly in the sort of later 80s, and I think the capacity was sort of slashed, but to be fair, we were never going to sort of get anywhere near that at the time. The state the club was in.
All right then, let's move on, but not too far from where that picture's taken. Actually, let's have a look. Who is this? It's Mr. Chris Shingler and his brother Rob. That's, I believe, in the summer of 1990. Yeah. Now, what on earth are you doing there with that mud and that cement mixer?
Yeah, we were all summoned by Mr. David Hando to give up a weekend, one June or July, I think it was, to all go and help over the ground. There must have been a couple of hundred people over the weekend turned up. With people I know, like Graham Rogers, our former manager, was a plumber, and he was fixing all the pipe work in the dressing rooms. The general sort of thing was, if it didn't move, painted amber or orange. But we were actually there. There was the actual wall had collapsed. But yeah, we were just basically just whatever needed to be doing, whatever we were told to do by David Ando, you just done it, basically.
Right then, let's have a quick fire round of a few slides. Let's go through a few more photos on probably bits of conversation we've already had. So there's another view of the Cromwell end. So you can see the home section there, Cromwell top of the pick. With a natural segregation of the toilet block in between. If you can just see that on the right-hand side. Social club stand on the next slide, I believe. There you go, yeah. So let's have a look at what we can see. Along the side opposite the main stand was the social club stand. We've had a bit of a chat there. It looks a bit rickety, wooden, bit of a terrace under a canopy. What did that... What was that like on a wooden terrace? Because I have no fathom of what a wooden terrace is like. Did it just absorb all the smells and was it a bit like, did it have a bit of bounce to it? Did it creak a bit? Did it give you sort of pause for thought if you put a goal in and celebrate it quite vehemently? Were you a bit worried about what was under your feet in there?
Do you want me to go? Yeah. Well, yeah, like I say, I only really stood over there for the last sort of few matches of the last season when Newport AFC played there, really. So my memory's not that brilliant of it. But yeah, it was, like I said, it was quite a good view from over there. It was surprisingly good. And obviously, you can see there's a little set of steps there coming down from the social club as well, where people could go up and down there as well into the bar. Obviously, you couldn't drink on the actual terrace itself. But the interesting little point, the little little sort of camera gantry there. Originally, that was the judges' box for the greyhounds when the greyhounds started. Because I mean, you're talking way back now in the 1930s when the greyhounds first come over to Somerton Park. So I doubt if they had, you know, the sort of, you know, the sort of photo finish facilities back in them days. So a judge would have been up there doing it, but it came in handy because obviously that's where, you know, they film matches from.
So you may or may not know. This is a sorry. I'm talking over you there. You may or may not know.
That's okay.
Are you probably about to answer this? So with the Speedway and the Greyhound, was Somerton Park built originally for other purposes other than Newport County, or was it a bit like a municipal sort of ground that was intended for multi-use, Chris?
Yeah, no. Originally, it was just a football ground. Originally, I believe the land was given by Mr. Lysett, you know, from the Lysett Steelworks, for Newport County. But I think in the 1930s it was sold to the Cardiff Arms Park Greyhound Company, who brought the greyhounds there. They run meetings twice a week in Newport and twice a week at the Arms Park in Cardiff. I don't know why the dogs stopped for some reason in the early 60s, I believe, and the Speedway started in 64, which I think the county by this time now got control back of the ground. I think they probably bought it back from the Greyhound Company. But the Speedway was probably a good move in the fact that obviously, you know, we had an income during the summer, you know, from the rent, what the Speedway team paid. So it was probably a good move, even though they did kind of wreck the corners a little bit, where the bikes would cut the sort of corners up. And obviously there was a hell of a lot of shale. As you can see from the bottom photo, when they're banking around the bends, they're kicking all the shale up, you know, and it's going straight onto the terraces, you know. So there was a lot of shale on the terraces.
Is that you in the floodlight copping a free watch?
It could well be, yeah. It could well be. I mean, I know we just had a recent spell of hot weather now, but to me, you know, Friday nights in the summer in Newport, we're all about the Speedway, you know. And all I can remember, it was always hot. It was noisy. It was smelly, you know, the smell of the bikes and the grit, and yeah, you know, because we couldn't really afford to sort of pay to get in. We would just go on that corner on the pylon there, and just perch up on there. Really, again, I mean, you look at it now, with you know, you wouldn't do it in a million years, but back then it was just a normal Friday night out, you know.
And was there a reason for the back and forth sales of the ground? If it was originally for Newport County, did Newport County start with Somerton Park and own it outright, and then it had a few changes of ownership to raise money, Chris? Is that how it went?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, County originally owned it. They were given the ground by Lysetts. As far as I know, then it was sold to the Greyhound people. I think the county bought it back, and then it was sold, obviously, to Newport Council. And then the county bought it back again in the early 80s, just after all our promotion and Welsh Cup success and European adventure. But obviously, by the end of the 80s, we had to sell it back to the council again, you know, because I think basically you know, the county just use it really as, you know, as an asset really to cash in on when the times got tough financially, you know. But yeah, like you see from the slide there now, it was used for lots of other sports as well. There was baseball played there. There was
baseball.
Yeah, it was. Well, the first program you can see is for some reason Cardiff versus Birmingham in baseball. The other program you can't see quite so well, but it was a U.S. Army were based in Gwent, and they played Alexander Old Boys, and the first set of innings was sort of Welsh traditional baseball, and the second innings was based on the American version.
That's something that I never knew going into this, that baseball was popular enough to be a spectator sport in this country.
Oh, yeah.
Ian had to fly all the way to America to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" with his with his daughter for his birthday, which we much enjoyed listening to the last special element of the pod. I wonder what they sang at Cardiff versus Birmingham, if they won if they won a game, or if they needed a bit of a stretch between the 6th and 7th. That is bonkers. So what have we got there? We've got. Sorry, go on.
No, it's just a bit of baseball. I mean, baseball is huge in Cardiff and Newport, and strangely enough, Liverpool. They were the three main centres in the UK, really. Obviously, it was different to the American version of baseball. But yeah, when they had the cup finals at Coronation Park, if it was one of the Pill teams, I mean, you would get 1,000 people down there. For the cup finals, it was a lot of footballers would play baseball in the summer to keep fit. That was the sort of general idea of it. But yeah, some of that was used, for a few other things as well. Obviously, under 21 matches, schoolboy matches. I did say to Ed the other day that I can vaguely remember there being some whispers about a pop concert being held there in the 70s, but that never materialized. And it also from boxing as well. It was supposed to be some boxing, but again, that never took off either.
It is a very bizarre clip here of the Police Football International between Wales and England in 1979. I can't imagine that being very popular for spectators. But I don't know. Maybe that would have been great fun, and a few handbags being thrown and fly tackles and that sort of thing. And then we got the Wales versus France under 21 game, 1981, which you have on the notes here that Mark Hughes got sent off. Did he?
Yeah, I'm almost sure it was either that game or they played Yugoslavia under 21s Wales a couple of years later. It was one of those games because I went to both of them, and I remember Mark Hughes getting sent off in one of them. Yeah. But my memory's just fading a bit on that one at the moment. But yeah, and absolutely, you were sent off in one of them. I know that Wales France one. I know Nigel Vaughan, who was Newport County player at the time. I remember he played in that game. So
I was going to ask Ian if. I was going to ask Ian if he'd gone to see any baseball games at Somerton Park and then realised it was in 1939.
Old as I may be, Jack, I just missed that. Just missed that season.
Okay, moving on. So we've got a few photos to look at for Paddy's Bar. We've recently talked about Paddy's Bar. It did burn down, but did they rebuild it again after it was burnt down from memory, or was that just no?
No, it was like I say, the whole ground was demolished then a year or so later. So unfortunately, no. But yeah, on the bottom picture there, just to the side of the end of the social club, you can see one of the back of the houses there in Fairfax Road, and just where that defender's standing there on the right hand side of the picture. At the back of there, that little fence there would have been the Speedway pits, and I presume it would have been the kennels for when the greyhounds were there originally. But obviously the Speedway riders would that was where they sort of took their kept their bikes when in between races, and have mechanics working on them and all sorts. So yeah, that was another quirky little feature.
And did Paddy's Bar run independent of the club, or was it a part of the revenue generation for Newport County at the time?
That's a good question. I presumed it was run separately from the club, but obviously, any profits I imagine went to the club. But yeah, who knows? To be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Did anyone know who Paddy was?
Yeah, his name was Paddy Gordon. I believe he lived in Ringland. He was a very, very well-known guy, in county circles. And a big, tall chap, wouldn't take no messing. But he was friendly guy as well, and he ran the club well, to be fair.
Right, this is the bit where we may find some salacious Ian Street history. Ian, the police room, as you can see on your screen. Did you ever see the inside of it?
Well, it's no, not from inside it, but the funny thing was when they would chuck people in there, you could you could sneak past and look in there where you could see the door, so you could see people who would be handcuffed up onto those rings you can see. So people were literally handcuffed to the walls. So you could have a little sneak past and see who was in there. Bizarre place. Very bizarre.
I don't know where is a worse place to be: the piss wall, back to back with your colleague in the sleet, or chained to a wall by that rather surly looking bloke.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they moved it, I think, because effectively that was they had to bring people around the sort of speedway track, and they'd sort of bring them out and stick them in this place, and it was more sort of back. If memory serves, it was more near the sort of home turnstiles. It was sort of behind that area where the sort of the program shop and all that was, wasn't it, Chris? But I think later on, they got rid of this, and then you were back. They whenever they arrested people, they were back towards the Cromwell end. But I think there was something in there, wasn't there, Chris? Later on.
Yeah. I mean, this sort of came about because we had a lot of trouble, sort of during the sort of early 70s. It was a time where the hooligans obviously were sort of in their prime, really, and like you said before, the skinheads and whatever. The gentleman in the photo was actually Keith Saunders. He was the secretary for many years at Newport County. And I think he was just sort of being used really as a bit of a model there, just to show the photo, really. But I think the general idea of this was, if you got nicked, they would take you around here, and handcuff you to the wall. And basically, at the end of the match, then they would bring what we used to call a Black Mariah. I don't know if you're familiar with that expression.
Yeah.
But like a big police van, they would bring that into the ground, and of course, all the guys then that they'd arrested would be taken up to the probably the police station at the Civic Centre then to be charged. So it won a nice experience, I doubt.
What I love about that photograph, though, look at the armchair. There's like an armchair that Bobby would have sat in, wouldn't he? After.
Yeah.
Which is
like Ian said, you would generally walk around and hope that the door was open to see who you were seeing there. And yeah, it was quite funny, actually. But yeah, it wouldn't be funny being in there.
For those who don't have a magnifying glass spare, I'm going to narrate the bit of copy that's on the back of that photo, I imagine. So it's titled, "Where They Tie Up the Soccer Hooligans, a Throwback to Newgate Prison." That's how a solicitor, of all people, described this room. But officials of the South Wales Football Club, which built the room, believe it is a major weapon in their battle against football thugs. It is the detention room at Somerton Park, home of Newport County. Soccer hooligans are taken there by the police and fastened to steel rings set in the wall until the match is over and they can be dealt with at the police station. When Newport played Swindon in the FA Cup recently, 30 arrests were made, and the room had one of its busiest days. It was that incident that prompted local solicitor Mr. Roger James to tell magistrates at Newport, "It's like the debtors' prison at Newgate. You only need straw to make it really authentic." The room is designed so that even the most violent inmate can do little damage. The only furniture is a table and chair at one end for the supervising officers. The walls are bare except for the steel rings to which the offenders are fastened to. The tiny windows in the roof have metal bars across them. Club secretary, Mr. Keith Saunders, said there are strong plastic handcuffs which the police use on one wrist of each troublemaker. Normally we get 7 or 8 having to be put in there, but it can hold as many as 30. What a grim place to be on a Saturday afternoon, eh? Fantastic. Okay, with the police bit over, let's have a little look at the main stand, the scene from the social club side. I think, Chris, this is the final goal scored at Somerton Park by Jason Prue.
That's right. Yeah. Jason, I believe, actually works for Pure Vans now. So that's a nice little round in the circle. We played Barrytown. I think it was possibly an Easter Monday game. It was the last match played by Newport AFC at Somerton Park before we had to go to play in Gloucester for 2 years. And of course, when we came back from Gloucester, they built Spitty Park by then, and obviously Somerton Park was erased to the ground. That was the final goal. We won 1-0, and Jason scored the goal.
Was it known at that time? It was.
Look at that! He's off the ground volleying. It looks like a great goal.
Yeah. No, it was a good goal. Yeah. We were actually standing on the bank there at that game. Yeah.
It looks like one of those photos from the soccer pull-out section from the paper with Spot That Ball, doesn't it? I used to love doing my nan's house. Never won.
No, I think the ball's the picture there, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Did the fans there on that day and the club itself know that was the last day at Somerton Park? Was it known then to people?
Yeah, it was pretty much nailed on then. We knew that we were going to go back into exile, and we pretty much knew that the ground was gonna be knocked down. Although it didn't get knocked down straight away, it was still there for I think a local side played. It might have even been Albion Rovers. I can't remember now, but I think a local side played on it for maybe for a year or so. But it got sort of vandalized, and people were breaking into it all the time after we left there. And there was a final match then in 1993. It was a Newport AFC present versus a Newport County past, and it was a fantastic night. We had the likes of Darren Peacock come out and played, and Keith Oakes was there. David Gwyther was there. All the Steve Lowndes, all the Richard Walden as well. Late Richard Walden played. It was fantastic to see some of these players play on the ground for that last time. And I think the main memory, I know it sounds a bit corny, but the main memory, by the time we left the ground, obviously it was quite lit, and the sun was setting, over towards like Tumbalum. And as you're walking out the ground, looking back across, it was so poignant seeing the sun setting. It was almost like as if it was setting on Somerton Park. I know it sounds corny, but that's exactly how it was. It was, like I say, we had some great times there. We had some bad times there. To use a modern day, it was a hole, but it was our hole. There was probably only 2 grounds overall in the league that I've been to which were worse than Somerton Park, and that would be probably Rochdale at the time, and obviously and Halifax as well. They were the 2 grounds which would have been on par with Somerton Park, if not slightly worse, to be honest. And funny enough, Halifax had a speedway track around it as well. So you can draw your own conclusions from that. But yeah, like I say, happy memories. Still, like probably Ian does, still remember pretty much every nook and cranny of the place and smell of it. And it is still sadly missed. And like I said before, before we started, it would be interesting to see if the money was around, sort of in those times that is now, that what the club could have actually done with the ground, because with the speedway, they could have took the speedway track out. That would give us more room again. You might have had a bit probably difficulty in putting anything too high at the Cromwell end, because obviously the houses on Cromwell Road backed onto it. But the rest of the ground, it could have been an open canvas, really.
It pains me that I didn't live to see it, but on this next picture, this is probably the most evocative, right? We've all seen this. This is the one that I want to hang up in my house, and to being a part of that would have been a joy, and also to know that it's our ground. And oftentimes, I'm sure I'm not the only person from Newport goes on holiday, and You get a few holiday friends, don't you, that you meet at the local bar. Oh, where are you from? Rochdale. Oh dear, you about that ground. But you talk about the old days in Somerton Park, or you may actually talk about Newport as a whole, and you'll say, well, it is a whole, but it's my whole. And I find myself now on a work trip away, and I miss the bloody place, let alone having all this rich experience of the Somerton Park days that I wish I was a part of, because it was ours, wasn't it?
Absolutely, and I also I think, Jack, as well, that for those of us who grew up where that was our formative football experience, much as I love being at Rodney Parade now, it's still not our ground. And and since we left Somerton, for me, we've always been slightly, we've been a bit nomadic. And Rodney Parade's the 5th home ground that I've seen us play at. The same for Chris. So it feels weird to have that. And I know that we've sorted leases out and all that sort of stuff, but not having your own ground as a fan, it pains me. It really pains me from the days when that was out. As Chris said, it was awful, but it was ours. And I can vividly remember games there, and there, however many years they are, back now. But you can remember as Chris, you can remember where you stood. You can, the conversation we've been having tonight, has been fabulously evocative for those of us who that's where we grew up. That's where we went to watch football. That's where we started, and it's desperately, I do find this has been beautiful to do, but I also find it really sad that we don't have that. I know we've got Rodney and it's great, but it's not the same for me as having a ground that's ours, and a ground that has the history and the ups and the downs and the Europes and the Cardiff games and all that sort of stuff. And obviously we've built new memories, your Man Uniteds and all that sort of stuff that have played at Rodney Parade and the great cup runs and and I sometimes wish I could merge them. I've always said I'd like to have seen Kevin Moore running down the Hazel side, and that would have been fabulous to see. And can Rodney Parade, will it ever get developed further? Because it still feels a bit of a clunky ground to me, a little bit like Somerton is in a way that it's got these weird little bits around it and it's a bit clunky. But it is in the city centre. It's got loads going for it, and I'm very pleased that we've got to deal with the Dragons and we're back in the town because obviously I've seen us play in Morton and Gloucester and but it's poignant, this, and it does bring back a lot of memories and a bit of, it tugs at the heartstrings, particularly me living up in Leeds now. I look back to those days when I used to walk over the bridge and work out what the crowd was going to be before a game. It's poignant stuff.
It's a heritage, isn't it? It's a heritage that we've lost that we hope for you listeners will bring back some of that to your ears and your eyes and bring back fond memories and remind you of the club that we are and we have been for a long, long time. So let's, this is a difficult sort of picture to look at, but this was the sad end if you're still watching along with us on YouTube. So this is taken from the Somerton Bridge, showing the ground completely, well, I'd say nearly totally demolished there. You can just about spot the St. Patrick's Church Tower over the Transport Bridge in the background, where the Cromwell end had obscured it previously. To draw it to a close, I just wanted to ask you both, what were your final memories of Somerton Park? What was your last game? I imagine, Chris, you've already spoken to it. It was the Jason Prue goal against Barry. Ian, can you remember the last time you left those turnstile gates?
I can't actually. I'd have to look back. It would have been when we came back after we'd been in Morton on the Marsh. So we came back and we had a season or whatever it was, didn't we? Playing back at Somerton. So it would have been sometime towards the end of that season before we got booted out again. I don't recall being at that game where that goal was just sown against Barry. So I don't recall being at that. So it wasn't that, but it would have been around that time. It would have been that season. But no, I can't remember what the last game was, which is a bit sad, really. But can't remember it.
Right then. it's been a long evening of reminiscing, and it's been wonderful to bring back to life the Somerton Park era and the memories of which filled a generation of let's say hope and sadness, and I know we haven't gone into a great number of many political elements to the demise of Somerton Park, and I suppose that's on purpose. Really, we wanted to get thinking about what it smelled like, what it looked like, how much a pint of beer was. What do we think, and where were the naughty boys stood, and all that sort of thing. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I have to thank above all, first of all, Chris, for your gracious coming onto the podcast and giving us all of your historical knowledge. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you ever so much, Chris, for coming on and chatting all things Somerton with us.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. That's all right.
Ian,
Enjoyed it.
Ian, any closing sentiments or statements?
No, it's been this. I felt it's been quite emotional doing this today. Thinking back to a lot of this stuff, and there'll be the older fan base. I'm sure if they listen to this or see this, it will spark a lot of memories for them. But I also hope that the younger fan base who never had the chance to go to Somerton this will give them hopefully a little bit to understand the history of the club as well. And the sort of long fan base that we've got, and people like Chris, myself, and loads of other people who've been around a while, and carry the club in our hearts, and have done for many years, and will do for many more, despite whatever's going on. We'll still be there.
I will bring that and draw that to a close. I will draw your attention to our socials. You can visit us on wherever you can find us, your Twitter, your X, Facebook, Blue Sky, Mastodon, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. It would be great to have you back on again. I would love to do a pod about the run-up to the European Cup against Karlsruhe Jena and all that was for us as a club. But until next time, thank you, Ian. Thank you, Chris. And for all of you, look after yourselves, look after each other. Above all, keep it county.